And again, it could be related to the fact that the countries are so much closer that there's more immigrants spread throughout Europe, not just England or Sweden. It's all over Europe.
Welcome to Third Side Convo with your host, Bob Phipps. Your panelists today are Ted Johnson, Jeff Nolan, Peter Gallo, and Michelle Walters. And now, your host, Bob Phipps.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Third Side Convo. Tonight, we're diving into one of the most significant political shifts of our time, the rise of what's called the far right across the globe. From Argentina to Italy, Germany, and beyond, movements once considered fringe are now influencing policies, capturing not only headlines, but votes. But what does this really mean? Are these voices speaking to real issues that we need to address? Are they a reactionary phase in uncertain times? Or is this a global trend that will reshape our future? Or will it fizzle out as history moves forward? As always, we are going to look beyond the sound bites and try to understand the broader context. And don't forget, the peanut gallery's live. They're going to be sharing comments during the show and staying with us for the after the show to discuss what we covered and maybe what we missed. But let's just get started and tackle these questions together. This is Third Side Convo, where we go beyond the noise and the politicians to find the heart of the matter. So let's jump right in. So I'm going to go on and start with Jeff. Jeff, I know you're on a tight schedule here in this far right thing, but you jumped right in when I said you wanted to talk about the far right. So you give me your opening thoughts.
Well, I mean, I think that it's gross. Anytime there is a jingoist kind of swing, this kind of just angry populism that I think is based in some ways on legitimate issues, but is also largely based on distracting kind of hateful rhetoric and a bit of racism, a bit of punching down. It resonates with people who frankly don't pay that much attention and want to blame problems on outside forces. And we're seeing it, all over the place. And like anything else, in my opinion, political, really what it comes down to is economic opportunity. And if people feel like their economic opportunities are limited, they look for people to blame.
Got it. All right, Michelle, why don't you go and give me your opening thoughts? I know you've been doing some reading up on this, and so what's your opening thoughts?
My opening thoughts are, I feel that whether it's in the United States or anywhere throughout Europe, it's the sentiment is the same with regards to we're looking for economic prosperity. We've had some difficulties here and abroad, and some of the key factors that are sitting there and that threaten, our economic prosperities we'll deal with, especially in Europe, though, is a lot of the immigration issues. And I think that that's something that needs to be looked at a little bit more closely here and also abroad. And I think that there has been, with this movement, pretty much worldwide, I think that it's definitely a place where we need to put some little bit more attention and understanding and really honestly try to get a tap on the pulse of what's going on and have an understanding on that.
Okay.
Because overall, it's a universal issue.
No, I got it. I mean, there's probably some valid points in there somewhere. Ted, are there any valid points in there with the arguments?
Lots of them. But I think to echo Jeff, I'm going to boost Jeff's point of view, and that is xenophobic traditions in this country have gone back a long ways, but they also have gone back throughout history. But I don't think people understand the last 30 years, over 100 million people have been displaced. By displaced, I mean they've been forced to move out of their country, out of their community, someplace. So people are always moving. And I think it has to do with wars. It has to do with disasters, economic and political instability. So, people from Sudan are trying to get out for starvation. People in Gaza want to dodge bombs. Do you know over 1.5 million people have left Ukraine and live in Poland now because of just the last 2 years? So this is what accounts for a massive migration move. And new people always make the set or established people nervous, and they start saying things.
All right, got it. No, good thoughts. Okay, Peter, why don't you round out the opening thoughts here?
And I think there's elements of very valid points on all three the other panelists so far. I think the problem has also partially been skewed by, I'm going to call it extremist thought in politicians, and if you like, the cancel culture that has grown up in the last couple of years, because the definition of far right seems to have been lost in the fog. What is far right? The term Nazi now is used as a general insult to anybody who doesn't agree with you. And we've seen that recently in the UK when there was an outbreak of demonstrations and essentially rioting after a young girl was murdered by an asylum seeker, I believe, and they were immediately branded far-right extremists. I think because far-right extremists reads better in the media than a bunch of pissed-off working people who are unhappy with the existing status quo in the country.
But the point is, Peter, that people are coming in because they're seeking for safe refuge. It's going to be Britain, Sweden, Dublin. I talked to a woman from Dublin the other day. She said you wouldn't recognize it. I was there 30 years ago. She wouldn't recognize it now because there's so much transmigration.
If you cross a border to escape hardship or a war, I don't have a problem with you being a refugee. If you cross 16 borders to get to where you're going, you're an economic migrant.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
That's it.
So your family will do the same thing.
And if you're an economic migrant that kind of forgot to bring your wife and children with you,
that's all you can afford.
There's something suspicious going on.
Oh, really? Well, the fact that you only have $400 instead of $4,000 seems to be a really good reason why you're only going by yourself until you can get established.
Well, let me ask a question. In the U.S., isn't it the policy that you have to be a refugee? In other words, if you're just coming for better economic, I guess that's where you got to have a lot of money and you have that HB1 visa or something, right? Jeff, do you see that it is the responsibility of the country? Because let's face it, probably half the world out there could be living in more money than they make and should be at one of these Western cultures, right? But can the are the Western culture, yeah. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure I understand your question, Bob. I mean, I just think that overall it's easy for politicians, right-wing politicians in particular, because they're the ones who happen to have made use of this, to point and scream at something, and sometimes it's valid. Like what Peter just said about a refugee crossing 16 borders is an economic migrant. I agree with him on that. And but it's easy to point and yell at them because it's proven to get votes and to get power and consolidate it. Look what's happening here right now. That allowed a certain group to come into power as of Monday, I guess. And yet all of the initial policy stuff that's being put forward does not address any of that. It addresses what we do for billionaires and oligarchs.
Okay. Michelle.
I see that across Europe as well.
Michelle, do you understand the other side here on what they're saying is that if the person is if the person wants to come to this country, we should always let them in, I guess? Is that,
what though? I mean, no, I think that at the core of this is it's one of those to where right now we have economic unrest, and with a lot of the immigration, I think that it's threatening that. It's, it's threatening the security of with us and the people that are in Europe, and people are really honestly trying to sit there and figure out on how are they going to deal with all the social issues, How are they going to deal with, where do we put them? How do we deal with the welfare? How do we deal, how do we effectively utilize the immigration policy to where it's not putting a strain on the current economy? To where that's what I'm saying is I feel like the residents and the citizens of whether it's going to be in the United States or whether it's going to be in Europe, they are having discourse because they don't necessarily feel that they can completely absorb all of this in a fashion that's not going to affect them negatively financially.
Michelle, I got to disagree with this. I tell you what, there's 12,000 homes that just got burned in LA.
Yes.
You know, there's going to be a massive need for carpenters, concrete people, stone, bricklayers, everything. You know where they're going to come from? Third world countries. And as soon as you get the fact that people are going to realize this is an economic war and we need people to do stuff like this more than we can provide as a country, this goes back to the Revolutionary War. We had soldiers from other countries help us fight the British. When we need something, we call on international help. And this is going to be another big issue when all these carpenters and stone layers and everything come in from Mexico, and the first convict's going to say, no, we got to deport these people. So we'll see how that plays out economically.
The thing is,
California building codes, but
That's Newsom's already changed them. He's already changed the building codes.
The law of supply and demand was going to kick in.
Absolutely, it is.
There are plenty of joiners and construction guys in the United States.
Exactly.
That we should
not as many are going to be needed. They're way short.
You can flood the market with essentially unskilled or unproven labor because some idiot built a city in a place where you shouldn't have done it.
You mean like you shouldn't have built a city in LA? Okay, there you go. That's a good point.
What's the priority? Because I think a lot of the immigration issues, which are now being sort of held up as some kind of far right, drum for banging, were probably inspired by far left policies and virtue signaling at the last time. And the conspiracy theory is if we flood the market with immigrants, undocumented aliens from South and Central America, we all know which direction they'll vote when there's an election. Yeah,
voting, Jeff.
I thought that would make sense, and I would have thought that made sense. And you want to hear the rows that start in this country when you go on about voter ID.
All right.
Let me put it this way. I'm going to say one last thing. When Santa Rosa, parts of neighborhoods of Santa Rosa, complete blocks of suburban development were burned down 6 years ago in Santa Rosa. An architect friend of mine goes up 2 years later.
I know.
He's walking through these neighborhoods. All you hear is saws. Yeah. Trucks going in and out, everything. You know what? All you heard was Spanish.
Yeah.
And all those guys came up from Mexico, and they're making $40 an hour instead of $80 an hour for U.S.
Hey, Ted, we're here in Florida. We understand. It would be nice to, have learned Spanish a little better when I was growing up. But we need to take our first break. But this was a great start. And then we'll be back. We got to hear from our sponsor. Please subscribe on our thirdside.com, YouTube and Facebook. And we will be right back after hearing from our sponsors. Thank you very much.
Corona Cigar Company is your one-stop shop for all your cigar needs. Whether that's a brand new humidor, a box of those new cigars you've been waiting for, a top-of-the-line cutter or lighter, a place to enjoy the finest cigars and spirits with friends, or the only cigars grown right here in the Sunshine State, we've got you covered. Come visit one of our retail locations for the ultimate cigar experience. Visit us online at coronacigar.com.
Oak Ridge Gun Range is a family-oriented shooting range that has been in business for over 30 years. They specialize in basic firearm training and offer numerous services such as consignments, gun trades, gunsmithing, and concealed weapon classes. I even got my training for gun safety at Oak Ridge Gun Range. Great customer service, and firearm safety is what they do best. So find out more at oakridgegunrange.com.
All right, I'd like to dig in a little bit of what Peter said and possibly ask Ted and Jeff to weigh in on this. But Peter, you said something about the fact of kind of painting a broad brush and that, X amount of people are now being considered far right, yet aren't there a bunch of really far right nut jobs that nobody wants to claim, right? I mean, you've got white supremacists, you've got you've got neo-Nazis and all these other things, but is that happening? And then I'd like Ted and Jeff to respond to that.
There has, certainly in Europe, there has always been, certainly, in my lifetime, there's always been this specter of your genuine hard right neo-Nazis. The only problem is I don't think the numbers would often peak into triple figures. What we have seen in the United States in the last couple of elections is a scenario where leading politicians are describing 50% of the electorate as Nazis. Can we wind our necks in a little bit about this? Because there is something far wrong with anybody whose political argument is based on my opinion that everybody who doesn't vote for me, i.e., the best part of 50% of the country, are deplorable scum, garbage, or any other insult you want.
Hey, Jeff, right? Jump on that one, Jeff.
Well, I mean, I don't know of a major political figure in the U.S. that is called 50% of the electorate Nazis. I think that's hyperbole. I think you're doing that on purpose. You're way, way, way too smart, as you've proven time and time again. If I had said that reverse, you would have called me out on that, and rightfully so. Because that's simply
deplorable. Because somebody I know had a little red hat that said deplorable on it.
Wow, okay. That's too bad. Well, that's just a statement from a former politician. Yeah. Wow.
I guess what I guess what I'm talking about, so we don't get too specific, is we'll ruin our rules on Uber discourse here.
Exactly. Yeah.
I guess it certainly isn't helping polarization. I'm just asking. I wanted to ask Ted and Jeff. Are we branding a brush? Because got to remember, all of what we're talking about here with the whole far right thing is much more active in Europe. I mean, and also you've got you've got Malay in Argentina, right? Who I was talking to some Argentinians today, and they said, yeah, they've got their issues. He's certainly done incredible things for the economy, but socially, the jury's still out. So what I'm trying to get at is I think the problems are more active in other countries. We are probably around it. Does that make sense or not, Ted? Can you see my point?
Yes, it does. I think anytime there's been immigration issues related to economic development or economic opportunity, right, you get race theory, you get all kinds of racism, you get pointed out to the others are not as cleanly. In fact, a new politician is saying he's trying to find a medical reason to turn back immigrants at our borders. And so it comes down to a tradition of, especially white supremacy and anti-Semitism. This goes back 150 years when the Irish showed up, when the Italians showed up. All of a sudden, these people were dirty, the Chinese, there were less then. It's a long tradition, not much different, just packaged again as a way to make people afraid.
Well, Michelle, what do you think then Yeah, go, Michelle.
Oh, no. I was going to say, I mean, what was it where they said, I mean, that how you sit there and move people, it's either by fear or by, what was the other one? It was by fear or, Teddy, you should probably know what it is. Fear or war. I think that's what it was. Fear or war. Yeah.
No.
Fear of the other. Yeah.
Fear of the other. But overall, it does seem like this is going to be much more of an issue, though, in Europe, because there's really in my opinion, doesn't seem like there's any type of unified policy that's going to sit there and completely cover let's say the EU and the nations that are going to be a part of it. And so I think that it creates, again, a certain amount of social unrest. Some people are very fearful of, certain parties. I think even like with Germany, they were talking about the new political party that's coming in and a fear of that going very, very far right. And, they want to make sure that they don't see some of the discretions that have happened in the past. Where it is, in Europe, there's so many different parties, there's so many different viewpoints, there's so many different areas of concern compared to at least here in the United States, we have much more unified policies.
And again, it can be related to the fact that the countries are so much closer that there's more immigrants spread throughout Europe, not just England or Sweden. It's all over Europe. People are looking for refuge everywhere.
Europe, though, and they're primarily going in. I think that it's in Germany, Spain, a little bit of Italy. There is there is a greater migrant push in that goes towards Germany and
yes, because the jobs are there.
Well, and what are they fleeing? And what are they fleeing?
Oh, I mean, and did they say in with regards to the migrant, that it's from Syria, it's from
The war.
from the war, it's from Ukraine. Ukraine's lost what, like 10 million people?
1.8.
Within the last since 2022, I believe.
Yeah. Hey, Jeff, what do you like? I know in Hungary, I don't know. I know Ted was talking about this a little bit. In Hungary, I guess they like completely closed borders, haven't they? From this movement, basically.
That's my understanding. There's not a doubt in my mind that there are pockets of immigrants that come to, countries in Europe or the United States that are bad actors and have bad intentions. Of course, that's true with any large group of people anywhere. But I think that trying to the loud right, trying to paint the entire group of migrants with a terrorism brush,
right.
Or they hate our freedoms, or they're trying to impose Sharia law in Oslo. That all that is just noise to get people angry and to get them voting for right-wing politicians, and also marketing for media outlets to get clicks and ad revenue. The more that we yell at each other, the more we freak out over this stuff, the more money they make. And it's why everybody's algorithms are full of just complete bullshit.
Marketing angles, Jeff. Marketing.
Yeah. Marketing. All right, we're going to go on and... Okay, Peter, you're going to start off the next segment. We're going to go on and get our marketing done with right now, because we've got to go on and have our final thing from the sponsors. And Peter, you're going to lead off and respond to that, and we will be right back in a moment.
Aw, Dad, my computer's slow again and I can't play my games.
Call Your Computer Solutions today, and we will scan for viruses and clean that computer up remotely and make it fast again. Our phone number is 407-826-0810.
Thanks, Dad. My computer's fast again. Now I can do my homework. Thanks for calling Your Computer Solutions at 407-826-0810. The Tibia Show would like to thank Boggy Creek Airboat Adventures for being one of our sponsors. I got to go on an airboat and saw a real gator. I even got to go to the gem mine and mine for some gems. We ate a steak dinner at the restaurant and even got some gator bites. If you want to have a blast with the entire family, I suggest you go to www.bcairboats.com right now. Get your tickets today. The website again is bcairboats.com.
All right, Jeff brought up the boogeyman in the room here, which we've been kind of avoiding a little bit. The boogeyman is, and I don't think it's an issue in the U.S., or doesn't seem to be, but isn't there a real fear in England, or at least in the U.K., that the concept of Sharia law is, something that is desired by people? I mean, I always hate the fact that they talk about, the number one baby's name in London is, Muhammad. Well, that's 78% of all Muslim babies that are, boys are named Muhammad. So that's a bunch of bullshit. But is there a real fear, and is it actually talked about? You're from the UK. What is it like over there? Because that's certainly, you're ahead of us in that regard.
How would I know? I live in North Carolina.
Yeah, right.
But the issue is Indian food in North Carolina, Peter. That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, but you were stuck in Scotland, and we almost didn't let you back in.
Yeah, that was xenophobia for you. No, I think the Sharia law argument it simply attaches because of the visibility of the Muslim population, most of whom actually have been there for years. But it's no different from anti-Semitism in the Middle Ages, because Jews will steal babies and poison wells, and anything else. I don't think there's any substance to it.
Okay.
It's just a convenient label. But there's a danger, I suppose it's too strong a word, that we're equating the problem with a race and immigration issue, because the irony is about the far right is all to do with, and I mean, if you look at the politics and the government structures of Nazi Germany, was essentially all to do with political control, control of industry, control of the population. One of the factors that contributed to in the end the military defeat of Nazi Germany was the amount of bureaucracy and paperwork there was for the manufacturer just to change a set of spark plugs on a Panzer IV. There was 16 government bureaucrats stamping forms and granting permissions.
Well, Peter, do you think that that's a Nazi thing or just a German thing?
No, I think it's the irony is if you look at countries in terms of who is more for government regulation, right, and control and piling on regulations. Look at California. You might as well.
Look, here we go. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, look at California. You live here all the time, don't you? You know all about California, don't you, Peter? And what you read? Yeah, I bet. You know, Newsom just canceled all building guidelines to help LA rebuild. You don't know that. He's
well, no, they were going to sit there and they were going to fast track the permit process, though.
That's right.
As long as you have the same type building, if you're not making any major
exactly same materials, right? Yeah.
Gotcha.
Peter
well,
froze, by the way.
Well,
Peter's frozen.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what? With all of the, it's so funny with the media these days, though, we're seeing things real time. Everybody's paying attention right now, for example, to the confirmations, and we've got the wildfires. Oh, my God, they're all over the news. So the political stuff has jumped in. And, Ted, you're right about that. I mean, people don't know really what's going on out there. There's certainly things that need to be done. But what I want to, kind of finish with is just I think I do agree with Peter in this one thing is that I think sometimes a big brush is used to paint far right. I'd love to keep the far right where they belong, which is in the sewer, okay? But I guess that's what happens politically, but it's the same thing that the Republicans do to the Dems when they're, like the deplorable thing we were just talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what bugs me. That's why I do this show, okay?
Gee,
I hate it.
So Jeff talked about 50% of people being deplorable. How about 50% of the people being snowflakes for having an opinion about their feelings? All of a sudden everybody was a snowflake. So that the point is that the disparity of issues in this country is so great, so vast, that everybody's going to have an opposing to something.
Yeah.
So the issue is whether or not we view people as human and they have their rights, their opinions. It's whether those who get organized and make the vote changes, they have the real power. That's the way our system works.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. No, you're right about that. I guess with the whole thing with this far right and far left, which, maybe that doesn't get talked, but it does get talked about, right? The far left was blamed for all the cultural stuff, right? The cancel culture that Peter was talking about was often blamed on the far left. And yet that got painted a brush on the people on the left, didn't it?
Of course.
Because
it's a simplistic first to the race line, first to the finish line, make a judgment, as opposed to let's wait until the real report comes out, or let's wait for more information. No, but
what we need to do, Ted, is hear more anecdotal evidence of one person that did something, right? That really proves the point. I know it. Michelle, what did you get out of your learning about this week? We always enjoy. What did you learn that you didn't know?
What I learned, though, this week is really that the problems that we all face are universal, whether it's here or abroad. And it's, being here in the United States, and we primarily focus in on our particular issues and what's affecting our livelihood, and not really honestly taking a step back and looking at it much more on the macro and what's going on around us, and being able to sit there and, do some research on what's going on in the various different countries. Looking at the EU, looking at the G7, looking at all of the various different new fractions of parties that are coming in. Like I said, it's a universal problem that we all share.
Hey, Michelle, you couldn't have wrapped up this show better than, just letting anybody else speak. And to think a year ago, you didn't even know what the G7 was.
Absolutely.
It's a really nice airplane. It's a really great
there you go.
jet.
Exactly. Well, that is literally good to have you back, Peter. No final thoughts for anybody. I think everybody's kind of said it, and I'm sorry for the jumble of the show. This was fun. I mean, look, I don't know. There's far right, there's far left, but we're all just people, and we've got to be able to listen to other people, and that's what we do. So please subscribe on Facebook, YouTube, and thirdsideconvo.com, and we look forward to seeing you again on another episode of Third Side Convo. Thank you.